IR. My name is O'Reilly. Thank you for this opportunity. And I would like to explain about the language setting to begin with. Please find the language selection button at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you wish to listen in Japanese, please select the Japanese channel. If English, please choose the English channel. And if you want to listen to the original, please turn it off.
For those of you who wish to listen to this call in English, please select English in the Zoom language select button. 本日のコールでは、米国の1995年
Before starting, I'd like to remind everyone that we'll be discussing forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reforms Act of 1995. Actual results may differ materially from those discussed today. Factors that could cause our actual results to differ materially are discussed in our most recent Form 20F and in our other SEC filings.
Now, 本日のコールでは、国際会計基準に
Please also refer to the important notice on page 2 of the presentation regarding forward-looking statements, our non-IFRS financial measures, which will also be discussed during this call. Definitions of our non-IFRS measures and reconciliations with the comparable IFRS financial results are included in the appendix to the presentation. Now we would like to begin. Presentation will be given by Christophe Weber, President and CEO, Milano Furuta, Chief Financial Officer, and Andy Plump, R&D President. And this will be followed by Q&A session. Let us begin.
Christophe, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Our fiscal year 2025 first quarter results reflect the significant impact of Vyvanse's generic erosion on revenue and operating profit, which we had anticipated. We actually expect this impact to moderate in future quarters, and fiscal year 2025 will be the last year of significant impact from Vyvanse erosion. There is no change to our outlook for the full year. Milano will discuss our financial results in detail in his presentation. Fiscal year 2025 is a pivotal year for Takeda, not least because of our rapidly progressing late-stage pipeline. I'm very pleased with our pipeline progress so far and excited about the future. As you know, earlier this month, we announced positive results from 2 pivotal phase 3 double-blind placebo-controlled studies of oveporexton. Both studies met all primary and secondary endpoints at each of the doses we studied. We are very encouraged by this result and what they could mean for people living with narcolepsy type 1. Later on this call, Andy will walk you through the top-line results and what you can expect next with oveporexton on our orexin franchise, as well as other pipeline achievements since Q4. Before we dive deeper into our pipeline strategy, I will pass over to Milano to review our financial results. Milano.
Thank you, Christophe, and hello everyone. This is Milano Furuta speaking. Let's go to slide 5, which summarizes our Q1 financial results. As we had anticipated, Q1 is highly likely to be the quarter most impacted by loss of exclusivity because of the strong Vyvanse performance in Q1 fiscal year 2024. This created a high comparator baseline for growth rates in Q1, but we expect this to moderate over the rest of the fiscal year. Revenue in Q1 this year was just over 1.1 trillion yen, a decrease of 8.4% or minus 3.7% at constant exchange rates or CER. Core operating profit per OP was 321.8 billion yen, a year-on-year decrease of 15.8% at actual FX or 11.9% at CER. Reported operating profit was 184.6 billion yen, which grew 11%. Core EPS and reported EPS were 151 yen and 79 yen respectively. Cash flow was strong this quarter. with adjusted free cash flow of 190.1 billion yen. Slide 6 shows our growth and launch products, which represents 50% of revenue. In Q1, they grew 5% at CER. We see it as a little bit slow start, but we anticipated a higher growth rate in subsequent quarters. In GI, Entyvio growth was 4.9% at CER, partially reflecting intensified competition in the IBD market. We do see increasing number of active Entyvio pen patients in the US, growing approximately 30% since the last quarter. Awareness, prescription, and satisfaction level for Entyvio pen are high, and our focus is to reduce complexity along the reimbursement and authorization pathway. As access for the pen expands, we expect a higher growth rate for Entyvio in the coming quarters. In rare diseases, Takhzyro continues to grow as a market leader in HAE prophylaxis. In our PDT portfolio, there was some phasing impact in our Q1 results. This is quite common in PDT, where we often see fluctuations on a quarter-to-quarter basis. We expect both IG and albumin to grow high single digit for the full year. In oncology, Frizacla continues to expand as we roll out global launches. In vaccines, Qdenga was impacted by the timing of product shipments as well as transactional effects, mainly the euro appreciation against the Brazilian real. Qdenga volume is increasing, and we still expect to deliver strong growth for the full year. Slide 7 shows a year-on-year revenue performance for the total company. Although our growth and launch products are expanding, we had a significant impact this quarter from Vyvanse generic erosion. Last year, there was a strong rebound in Vyvanse revenue in Q1, mainly due to generic supply constraints in the US and the growth ex-US ahead of loss of exclusivity. This resulted in a high year-on-year comparator for Q1 this year. We saw the generic supply situation in the US improved from Q2 last year, and the generic launches in Canada, Germany, and Brazil last summer. This means we expect less headwind from Vyvanse from next quarter onwards. Vyvanse was a main driver of our revenue decline of 3.7% at CER, in addition to some impact from Medicare Part D redesign. FX was also a headwind this quarter due to appreciation of the Japanese yen against major currencies. Slide 8 shows a year-on-year bridge for core operating profit. You can see that the LOE of a high-margin Vyvanse was a main reason for the year-on-year decline of 12% at CER. This was partially offset by operational efficiencies from the enterprise-wide efficiency program we initiated last year, in particular in R&D spend. Next, reported operating profit increased by 11% versus prior year, mainly due to lower impairment and restructuring expenses. Slide 10 is our latest debt maturity ladder. In June and July this year, we executed 2 leverage-neutral bond issuances, one in Japanese yen and the other in US dollar, to pay off the short-term funding we raised to prepay syndicated loans in March 2025. We had to prepay these loans to streamline our upcoming maturity profile in terms of both duration and currency mix. Of note, these new US dollar bonds generated significant demand, more than 4 times the $2.4 billion that we finally issued. This enabled us to secure favorable terms. In addition to these refinancings, we also repaid debt that matured in Q1 this year, including an $800 million bond. Over the next 3 years, our average annual maturity is now approximately 220 billion yen, which we believe is manageable considering our cash flow outlook. Slide 11 shows our full year outlook for FY25, which is unchanged since May. As we have explained today, Q1 was significantly impacted by Vyvanse generic erosion, but this was within our expectation, and we are not changing our management guidance. Finally, a word on tariffs. Our FY25 outlook does not reflect the potential impact of tariffs, and in general, we believe that we are well positioned to manage the potential impact at this time. This slide is the same as we showed at Q4, and I would like to emphasize again that the value of our imports into the US is approximately 8 to 10% of our US revenue, and the vast majority of this comes from Europe. The tariff rate, let's say 15%, would be applied to this number once it becomes effective. Thank you, and I'll now hand over to Andy for updates on the pipeline.
Thank you very much, Milano. Hello to everyone on today's call. I'm very excited to begin with the impactful update we have on oveporexton. Narcolepsy type 1 is a neurologic disorder caused by the loss of orexin-producing neurons in the brain. It is characterized by daytime symptoms like excessive daytime sleepiness, cataplexy, cognitive effects such as lack of sustained attention, and nighttime symptoms like sleep paralysis and disrupted nighttime sleep, which all have a substantial impact on patients' ability to function as well as quality of life. As we communicated earlier this month, both phase 3 studies met all primary and all secondary endpoints, demonstrating statistically significant and clinically meaningful improvements at week 12 across all symptoms at both BID doses. These doses were chosen to provide flexibility for physicians and patients to manage daytime and nighttime symptoms. The p-value you see on this slide of less than 0.001 does not do justice to the statistical significance of the trial. Often, results had many more zeros before the one. Oveporexton is on track to be the first-in-class and potentially best-in-class orexin-2 receptor agonist that treats the underlying orexin deficiency and has the potential to establish a new standard of care in NT1. In 2 phase 3 trials, oveporexton demonstrated the ability to normalize the majority of treated patients across almost all NT1 symptoms. Improvements in excessive daytime sleepiness were measured using the Maintenance of Wakefulness Test and the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. MWT is a test used for regulatory purposes, where patients are kept in a dark room and asked to stay awake for 4 40-minute sessions. It is best accompanied with subjective endpoints like the Epworth Sleepiness Scale that describes how well patients respond to treatment. Most of the patients on oveporexton achieved normal ranges for both the MWT and the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. Cataplexy is a very important endpoint for patients and regulators. We were thrilled to see that it was so significantly improved across all doses as measured by weekly cataplexy rate questionnaires. Cognitive benefits like sustained attention were recorded using the psychomotor vigilance test. And finally, the benefits to patient satisfaction and quality of life were recorded using surveys like the short form 36 that includes measures of fatigue and measures of holistic function like the Narcolepsy Severity Scale for clinical trials that measures the effects on disrupted nighttime sleep, among other symptoms. Nighttime symptoms are also measured subjectively with the use of sleep diaries. Now, importantly, all objective measurements were associated with subjective improvements of daily function. Oveporexton was generally well tolerated with a safety profile consistent with past studies. No serious treatment-related adverse effects were reported. The most common adverse effects were insomnia, urinary urgency, and frequency. As with the phase 2b experience, the majority of urinary events and insomnia decreased over time in both severity and frequency. More than 95% of participants who completed the studies enrolled in the long-term extension. We believe these data and the high enrollment in the long-term extension study are strong indicators of the transformational benefit oveporexton can deliver across the symptoms that impact NT1 patients. And we look forward to sharing multiple oral presentations starting at World Sleep, with more to follow at future medical conferences. Takeda will host an investor call on September 8th, 2025 from World Sleep in Singapore. Based on these strong phase 3 data, we plan to file for U.S. approval in NT1 later this year, with regional filings to occur simultaneously or shortly thereafter. We believe these outstanding phase 3 results have the potential to establish oveporexton as a new standard of care for patients with NT1. Next slide, please. The phase 3 results in NT1 are exciting, and this is just the beginning. We will continue to gather information in the long-term extension to see how patients fare over longer periods of time. As previously reported, sustained effects beyond 6 months have been observed, with many of the patients being treated for more than 2 years now. We believe the long-term extension data from the phase 3 and phase 2b trials will enhance our deep understanding of orexin biology and allow us to optimize treatment for patients in need of this lifetime therapy. Our orexin franchise is making rapid progress beyond oveporexton. The next generation orexin 2 receptor agonist, TAK-360, is in phase 2 development for narcolepsy type 2 and idiopathic hypersomnia. These results are expected to read out at the end of this fiscal year or early in fiscal year 2026. And of course, we continue to work in our laboratories on the discovery and development of additional tailored orexin agonists that have the potential to address vast unmet needs in diseases where orexin plays a role. We expect a new next-generation orexin agonist to enter the clinic later this year as we accelerate development of our multi-asset orexin pipeline. Next slide, please. Pipeline momentum in fiscal year 2025 is off to a great start. We now have outstanding results from 2 phase 3 programs in hand. The phase 3 Verify study of rusfertide, a first-in-class synthetic hepcidin mimetic in development to treat polycythemia vera, was presented at the American Society of Clinical Oncology plenary session. The plenary session is where data with the potential to transform medical practice is typically highlighted. The discussant at the plenary session, an ASCO-appointed expert, emphasized that, quote, "The study result is practice-changing," end quote, and recommended that rusfertide should become part of the standard of care for patients. In our GI squared therapeutic area, we initiated a phase 3 head-to-head trial comparing zasocitinib versus deucravacitinib that is designed to clearly differentiate zasocitinib in psoriasis. We also initiated a phase 3 trial for elritercept in second-line anemia-associated myelodysplastic syndrome. This is the beginning of a broad, late-stage elritercept development program for which we will have more to say in the future. There are several regional approvals this quarter, including European approval of Etcetras as part of an additional chemotherapy regimen in frontline Hodgkin lymphoma. Our plasma-derived therapies continues to broaden indications and enter new markets. HYQVIA was approved in CIDP and multifocal motor neuropathy in Japan. GammaGuard ERC, a new formulation with low IgA antibodies, was approved for the US and European markets. In addition, HiHub and HiHub Duo, 2 new devices designed to streamline the administration of HYQVIA, were approved in the US. Looking forward to the rest of the fiscal year, and if you could move to the next slide, please, 2025 is indeed a pivotal year for our late-stage pipeline. I have already highlighted the next steps for oveporexton. For rusfertide, we are targeting a medical conference in the second half of the fiscal year to share our 52-week data update that will include durability of response and additional safety. We plan to file an NDA in the U.S. for rusfertide and polycythemia vera in the second half of fiscal year 2025. And finally, later this year, we will have top-line data for zasocitinib in 2 pivotal phase 3 psoriasis trials, Latitude 3001 and 3002. Looking further into the future, next slide, please. The 6 programs in our late-stage pipeline have the potential to deliver transformative benefits to patients while contributing to Takeda's long-term growth. Zasocitinib, our oral allosteric TYK2 inhibitor, continues to add expansion opportunities and will start a phase 2 study in hidradenitis suppurativa, or HS, within the next year. HS is a chronic, recurrent, and debilitating inflammatory skin condition. The global prevalence is estimated to be around 2%. There are limited approved treatment options available, and people living with HS continue to experience high disease burden. We believe there is a significant need for a durable and effective advanced systemic therapy. Going forward, we will maintain our strong focus on late-stage development activities with a continued emphasis, where possible, on acceleration. These efforts will support our ambition to file up to 5 additional indications from our late-stage programs through fiscal year 2029. Thank you very much, and I'll now turn it back to Chris for Q&A.
それでは皆様からのご質問をお受けしたいと思います。
Now we would like to open the floor for
回答
questions.
者としまして、クリストフ・ミラノ、
And we have Christoph, Milano, Andy, and US Business Unit President Julie Kim as well to answer your questions. If you wish to ask a question, please let us know with the raise a hand button on Zoom. If you're participating in the Japanese channel, please ask your question in Japanese. If you're participating in the English channel, please ask your question in English. If you're listening in the live audio, you can ask the question in either of the 2 languages. Please keep your questions to a maximum of 2. Please ask all the questions together. First question, Morgan Stanley, Muraoka-san, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Thank you. This is Muraoka, Morgan Stanley. About the sales of individual products, looking at that Entyvio, IG, Vyvanse, Qdenga, they were relatively weak. And I think your message was they're okay, but in the second quarter, for those 4 products that I just mentioned, do you expect recovery? That's my first question. And the second question is orexin. After 861 and 360, I think you have another molecule coming into the pipeline. So what is the additional benefit? And what kind of clinical advantage can we expect for this new molecule that be added to the pipeline? Thank you. First question was about IG, Entyvio, Vyvanse, and what was the 4th one? Qdenga. Qdenga. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
So the first question about some of the products that were a little bit weaker in Q1, so IG, Entyvio, Vyvanse, Qdenga in particular, how are these looking to perform in the rest of the year? Perhaps I'll ask Christoph to begin that answer and then Julie to add detail as required. And then the second question was for any additional data that we can, or any additional direction we can provide on the next additional orexin agonist coming through into the pipeline later this year. I'd like to ask Andy to comment on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. It's very clear that in our mind, the first quarter is quite soft and does not reflect the underlying dynamics of our product. And this is why we have not changed our guidance for the year. We believe that this first quarter does not reflect the dynamic of the product. So in the case of Entyvio, the pen continues to accelerate. We are not at full market access yet in the US. So that means that we are losing some prescription and therefore some switch opportunity from IV to sub-Q. But we are progressing in terms of market access and will reach the maximum and the optimal stage during this year, so that we continue to accelerate the pen, and the feedback we are getting on the pen is very strong. Julie can explain further. On Vyvanse, Milano has explained that the Q1 is extremely impactful in terms of growth rate because of a year-on-year comparison. We also know that eventually we'll reach a plateau. Therefore, that's why we believe that this year is the last year of significant impact of Vyvanse generic exposure. So you will see a waning impact during the year, especially because there was a very significant generic penetration at the end of last year. The immunoglobulins, there is always some quarter by quarter growth rate change, but we remain committed to the forecast that we gave in Q4, which is mid-single digit overall PDT franchise growth, high single digit for IG. So you see we are slightly lower. I mean, remember that when it comes to immunoglobulin, the demand is greater than supply. So it's all about, allocation, and we have a very competitive portfolio right now with new indication. And Qdenga is actually the same. The demand is greater than supply. We are ramping up our supply. So it's all about shipment and allocating our dose to where we have greater demand. So we are very much convinced that Qdenga will continue to grow in the future. And this is why overall we believe that we will deliver our guidance, which is broadly flat in revenue, for example, for the year.
Muraoka-san, this is Andy. Maybe I can dial up and provide some context regarding our approach to orexin and our broader orexin franchise. So we think of diseases that could potentially be managed through orexin agonism in three buckets. There's orexin deficiency, which is NT1. There are other rare diseases that are characterized by normal orexin levels like NT1 and idiopathic hypersomnia. And then there's a large array of more common diseases that have symptoms like disruptions in sleep-wake cycles, like other neuropsychiatric symptoms that we believe modulation of the orexin pathway could be beneficial. And it's clear that TAK-861 is not just a first-in-class for type 1 narcolepsy, but a potential best-in-class, and with potentially very little room for additional differentiation. For TAK-360, as I've mentioned, we're still learning a lot about TAK-360, and we have 2 ongoing phase 2b programs in type 2 narcolepsy and idiopathic hypersomnia, so rare diseases that are characterized by orexin deficiency. We'll have another molecule coming into the clinic later this year, and we continue to build additional molecules that have differentiated pharmacology that we can use to begin to explore benefits in more common disorders. The way I would think about orexin is that with 861, we're really just scratching the tip of the iceberg.
ありがとうございます。すみません、
Thank you.
最後のファーマコロジー違う製品というのは、
product that is different in pharmacology, is that for more general disease, more common diseases? Is that the correct understanding?
That's our intent at this point. I mean, we have to also recognize that there's still an immense amount to learn about this pathway after type 1 narcolepsy. So we have the level of experience that we have in type 1 narcolepsy with these phase 3 results and with the extension from our phase 2b study, where we have patients now have been on therapy for up to 2 years, is quite extensive. There's still very little known about this pathway outside of type 1 narcolepsy. Our intent is to win and own this pathway with multiple molecules and explore the vast potential of this disease in both rare and common disorders.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much.
はい、ありがとうございました。それでは次のご質問は、
Thank you.
シティの
Next
山口様。
question is
どうぞよろしくお願いします。
Yamaguchi-san from Citi, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Thank you. So thank you very much for taking my questions. This is Yamaguchi from Citigroup. I have two questions. The first question regarding a competitive landscape of narcolepsy. Recently, Alkermes put up a top-line release on the elections, and they seem to be missing catalepsy a portion of the data. And Andy-san was talking about the catalepsy importance. So you don't need to talk about competition, but can you elaborate how this is important and how this is going to be differentiated from your products and Alkermes products? That's the first question. Second question is more broad questions. Christophe was talking about some general investment strategy for the US, which does not really contain new things, but it was like 30 billion in total. And globally speaking, a global major company like you companies trying to put up some investment to the US market for the future, especially on the manufacturing side. Do you have any kind of new plan how to accelerate those investment in the US, or can you make any kind of comment on what's the new sort of a business model that the US companies, including your companies, are looking for in the US, like a DTC, trying to control the cost structure? So that's an open question, the second one. Thank you.
Thank you, Yamaguchi-san. So the first question on our thoughts on evolving data in the narcolepsy landscape, I'd like to ask Andy to comment on that. And then the second question on investment in the US, or how our business may evolve given the changing landscape in the US, I'd like to ask Christophe to comment on that, please.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for the question, Yamaguchi-san. So as I mentioned, we believe that TAK-861 oveporexton is not just first in class, but a potentially best in class agent. We've seen benefits across all symptoms using both objective and subjective measures. And in many cases, these benefits normalize these patients across all, many, or some of the symptoms of narcolepsy type 1. Including cataplexy. So cataplexy is a somewhat variable measurement. We were very pleased to see that our results in cataplexy are quite significant and very meaningful for patients, and we'll look forward to presenting those data at World Sleep next month. It's hard to comment on the competitive landscape because we haven't seen data. So we'll see data rolling out in sleep, but I think suffice it to say, we really believe with the time advantage that we have and with the data that we'll present next month, that oveporexton is a highly competitive agent in this class.
Thank you, Andy and Yamaguchi-san. Regarding our investment first, I would like to remind everyone that we are highly invested in the US. So, for example, if you look at our manufacturing network, the country where we have the biggest manufacturing presence in terms of number of sites and number of product we manufacture, number of colleagues that are involved is by far the US. So that's why we are extremely balanced, and we will continue to invest in this manufacturing network in the US. And that's also why our exposure to tariff is limited, as Milano explained. So strategically, we continue to take into consideration many parameters when we decide a new investment. Of course, we are very much aware of geopolitical consideration and other considerations, so that will drive our investment decision in the future. But I want to really reinforce the fact that we are extremely invested in the US on the manufacturing side, obviously also on the R&D side. We do the majority of our research and development activities in the US. So, and that we think is important for our long-term strategy and strategic situation, because we also do the majority of our revenue the biggest part of our revenue in the US. When it comes to the DTC, I will ask Julie to comment on the direct-to-consumer model. If Julie, you could give your perspective about that would be great.
Yes, thank you, Christophe. In terms of the direct-to-consumer model that you've heard about in the news, this is an opportunity for the pharmaceutical companies to be able to offer their medicines on a platform, cutting out the middlemen in the US. So this would allow us to go direct as the platform indicates, and this would provide lower pricing directly to patients without necessarily impacting the pharmaceutical companies negatively, because as you're probably aware, on average across the industry, roughly 50 cents of the dollar goes to other players in the value chain. So the manufacturers currently receive on average 50 cents on the dollar. So being able to offer a significant discount on the list price through these platforms does give patients a direct benefit, and it's also good from the manufacturer standpoint as well.
Julie, can you comment? Still, just to manage expectation, our portfolio of product is not an easy one to apply DTC. Can you comment on that?
Sure. The key aspect of the DTC platforms that I should have mentioned is that this is cash paying for the patients. And so this is primarily more retail medicines. The current products like insulin are offered in this type of platform, as well as GLP-1, for example. So our portfolio is not necessarily this type of retail medicine, but we will look at opportunities for products such as Trintellix on this platform.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yamaguchi-san. Moving to the next question then. Next question, I'd like to call on Stephen Barker from Jefferies, please.
Yes, Steve Barker from Jefferies. Thanks for taking my questions. My first question is related to spending. You are forecasting full year SG&A flat year on year and a small increase in R&D, but both SG&A and R&D were both down substantially in the quarter. So I was wondering if you comment on that and the outlook for spending. And then the second question is related to Orexin. As per the slide, you are looking for the new compound, which is scheduled to enter development this year. You're looking at indications like sleep-wake, respiration, metabolism. Sleep-wake, I think that's something related with Alzheimer's, respiration. Should we be thinking sleep-wake is Alzheimer's, respiration, sleep apnea, perhaps, and then metabolism? Is that something? If you could comment on how Orexin might affect metabolism and if it could actually be useful in treating obesity. I'd like a comment on that too, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for your question. So the first question on trends of spending Q1 versus the full year outlook, I'd like to ask Milano to comment on that. And the second on the new compounds in Orexin, looking at sleep-wake disorders, what potential exists in these areas, particularly obesity is an area of interest. I'd like to ask Andy to comment on that, please.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for the question. So let me answer to about SG&A first. So this is the mostly this decline comparing to year on year in the last quarter one is for SG&A, it's more like FX. If you compare the constant exchange rate, it should be mostly flat. That's SG&A. So it's in line with our the full year forecast. For R&D, we do the invest for the pipeline developments, and still we anticipate the R&D investment is ramping up. For example, now we start head-to-head study with Naducra in July. Autorecept also in July, we started the trial. For 360, also we started the trial in April. So we are ramping up all the activities. But still, it's a good thing is we also see the savings from the efficiency program we initiated last year. And then we are also keeping the very tight management of the headcount, the cost, both sides, so that we see also the benefit from all the savings efforts. So that's how the Q1 the numbers eventually landed. But eventually we are still keeping the full year forecast management guidance for both SG&A and R&D.
Thank you.
Stephen, on your question regarding the breadth of potential of orexin agonists across indications, I'll go back to the earlier comment that we're really just starting to scratch the surface of the potential of this biology. We know now definitively that agonism of the orexin 2 receptor in type 1 narcolepsy can have profound benefits and be administered in a way that's tolerable for patients. So now we're starting to imagine and develop molecules that have an array of pharmacology that will allow us to explore opportunities in other rare disorders like type 2 narcolepsy, like idiopathic hypersomnia, and then begin to explore opportunities in other disorders that are characterized by either sleep-wake cycle disruption, because there's an obvious link there. Respiration, we've already shown and we've published with TAK-925, our IV molecule, that there are unique properties of this pathway in respiration. And based on extensive scientific literature and the expression patterns of the orexin receptors in the hypothalamus, we believe that there are potential opportunities in metabolism. I don't want to get too far out ahead of ourselves. Our goal is to develop the array of molecules that will allow us to explore this breadth of indications and to go from there.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, moving on to the next question. I'd like to call on TD Cowen, Michael Nedelkovich. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you for the questions. I have two. My first is on Entyvio. You've noted in the past that transitioning patients from Part B to Part D coverage has been a hurdle to adoption of the pen. Why should we expect that dynamic to fall away in the coming quarters? And on the same topic, a competitor IL-23 will likely soon offer subcutaneous induction and maintenance. How do you think that might change the competitive landscape, especially considering that the Entyvio pen seems to be helping to ward off competition? So that's my first question on Entyvio. And then my second question is on zasocitinib. In the head-to-head trial versus deucravacitinib, can you remind us if it's powered for superiority? And in that trial, if zasocitinib only shows non-inferiority, how would that affect your $3 to $6 billion peak sales ambition in psoriasis? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So the first question on Entyvio coverage and competition landscape, I'd like to ask Julie to comment on that. And the second question on the head-to-head, is it powered for superiority? Andy, if you could take that one, please.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for the question. When you look at the dynamics in the US around pen access, you are right. There have been challenges in terms of making the switch, but we're working through the quality, I'll call it the quality of the access at the local level. Sometimes this is a challenge of the coverage that's provided at the parent plan not being pulled all the way through to the local plan. Sometimes it's because of that switch from IV to pen, medical to pharmacy. Sometimes it's a system issue and helping at the very local level, addressing those specific system issues. So we're attacking all of these one by one. And as we clear through them, we are seeing the pull through on pen. So this is why we believe that as we continue to improve the overall coverage level and that quality of the pull through, that we'll see the benefit from pen driving further growth, as we're seeing roughly 30% growth quarter-over-quarter on the pen. In terms of the second part of your question in regards to sub-Q induction, that is something that we are also looking at. And for right now, Entyvio still has very strong bio-naive starts within UC in particular. And so this is something that as we continue again to pull through on the access, we expect to see further growth for the pen.
And Michael, I'll start on Zazo and then hand it over to Christoph to talk about the competitive dynamics. So we're seeing great progress in our overall Zazo program, as I mentioned, on track to read out our 2 psoriasis phase 3 studies later this year. Our psoriatic arthritis program is going well. 2 phase 2b studies in UC and Crohn's that will read out next year, starting now in HS. And then we have an additional indication, perhaps indications that we look forward to starting soon. Your question specifically on the head-to-head with deucravacitinib, yes, this study is powered for superiority. And Christoph, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Mike, for the question. Yeah, it's a head-to-head superiority because we are very confident, obviously, that the product profile will deliver this type of result. It is important because we want to demonstrate that zadocitinib is a new class of oral which changed the efficacy profile of the oral treatment. Overall, today, the oral treatment have around 16% market share, and it has not been growing. And we believe that our compound zadocitinib, perhaps also with another compound of another class in development, an oral, you know what I'm talking about, will change that. And we believe that that's the promise of this new oral, is to really change the importance or the contribution of oral treatment to the treatment of psoriasis. So this head-to-head is important to really create a new oral standard in terms of efficacy. But of course, we will also use the phase 3 result. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mike. それでは次のご質問は
Moving on to the next question.
野村証券の
Nomura
松原様
Securities, Matsubara-san.
よろしくお願いいたしま
Please
す。
ask your question.
はい、野村証券の松原と申します。
Yes, this is
聞こえますでしょう
Matsubara,
か？
Nomura Securities.
はい、
Can you hear me
聞こえ
okay? Yes, we can
ご
hear
説明
you.
いただきありがとうございます。
Thank you for the
私
presentation.
はまず一つ目、先ほどのコメント
My
で、
first
この
question
ファー
is
ストクォ
related
ー
to
ター
an
の成
earlier
長
comment.
は、
First
数
quarter
字の
growth.
数字は、成長ダ
First
イナミ
quarter
ックスを
numbers
模倣し
doesn't
ていないとお
necessarily
話だったと思うん
represent
ですけ
the
れども、
overall
それ
growth
はアメリカの
dynamics.
この売上っていうのが
But
少し難
if you
聴
look
に
at
見
the
えており
sales
ま
in
し
the
て、
US,
その
it
要因を
looks
まず
quite
一つお
weak.
伺いしたい
So
と
I
いう
want
の
to
と、
understand
二
why.
つ目が
That's my
タ
first
クザイロ
question.
なんですけども、
And
これ
the
もア
second
メリ
question is
カ
about
単調になっ
Takhzyro.
ていて、そ
Again,
の背
Takhzyro
景
is weak
と、
in the United
直近
States.
で
What is
ア
the
イオ
reason
ニス
behind
の
this?
ドニダ
And
ロ
also
センがやっ
Ionis,
てくると思うんですけど
Donidalorsen
も、
is
新
going
規
to be
開発の
launched
競合を
very
やってく
soon.
るという意味で、
So this is
今
going to
後
be
今
a
後の成長
competition
を懸
for
念
new
しておく
patients.
べきなのかど
So
うかとい
should
うとこ
we
ろを
have
伺
some
っていこうと
concern
思い
for
ます。
this product in the future?
Thank you, Matsubara-san. So the first question on so the US revenue performance in Q1 and what some of the dynamics there are. And then the second question on Takhzyro specifically. So I'd like to ask Julie to comment on those, please.
Hi, thank you, Matsubara-san, for the question. One of the things that please to remember in terms of the US performance is that you're also seeing reflected in these numbers the impact of the Medicare Part D redesign across key products in our portfolio. So that is part of the impact on the growth. In regards to Takhzyro in particular, Takhzyro continues to have strong performance in the US. And yes, there are new competitors coming onto the market, but in terms of efficacy, there is really not a significant change in efficacy from those competitor products. When you look at the long-term history that we have, both in terms of performance and safety, and you look at the real-world data that we've collected on Takhzyro since its launch, we are in a very strong position to defend Takhzyro in HAE.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. This is Furuta speaking. I would like to add just one comment. In the United States, Christophe and Julie have just already mentioned the product dynamics, and also I don't have any additional thing to say about the overall situation, but everything that we have explained so far is US focused, including Vyvanse. Vyvanse impact is the biggest in the US, and this is why the US numbers, the performance looks a little bit softer. As far as Takhzyro is concerned, demand continues to be strong, but the channel inventory is now lower. That's another factor behind the weak performance of Takhzyro. Understand. Thank you.
はい、ありがとうございました。
Thank you.
次は JP モルガンの
Next question is Wakao-san, JP Morgan, please.
はい、JP Morgan Wakao です。
JP Morgan Wakao.
I have a question. Firstly, about R&D expense. R&D expense represent only 90% progression toward the full year guidance, which seems to be slow. Is this in line with the plan, or have there any suppression for spending? And based on the first quarter progress, do you foresee any change to your full year R&D expense outlook? Whether 861 overproduction phase 3 study now completed, there also does not seem to be a factor that to drive an increase in this fiscal year. Is the first question. And a second question is about MFN. You briefly mentioned the U.S. policy, but I'd like to know more about most favored nation drug pricing policy. Are you currently in discussion with the U.S. government on MFN? And have you received any indication of targeting pricing? That's it.
Thank you, Wakao-san. So the first question on R&D expense progress towards the full year guidance, is this in line with plan? Milano can comment on that. And then the second question on discussions around most favored nation, I'd like to ask Julie to comment on that, please.
Thank you, Wakao-san. So I'm going to comment on the first R&D a spend in Q1. So if you compare against last year Q1, there's a multiple effect. Sorry, I think to Steve's question previously, I explained as a kind of efficiency program as a whole, but there's a bit a detailed explanation I can add. So comparing to last year, we had a few program termination, like soticlestat or 062. So these program termination create some space for the budget. That's one. The second, we had some pipeline financing arrangement with Blackstone. That also helps for the R&D savings. And the third one is something I mentioned previously, that we are continuing for the efficiency program efforts. So we managed all the overall the budget. Everything is very tight. So that's also creating the savings space. So if you recall our explanation at the Q4, we are making all these savings, and then we will reinvest for those savings for the pipeline development. That's going to happen. So from July, we are starting the phase 3 for the Eltercept head-to-head study with the Ducra. So this will ramp up, and then we will increase. We will ramp up all these R&D operations. So eventually, all in all, we are in line with the plan.
So could you clarify first quarter performance was in line with your internal plan or below?
Yes, we are making savings, but overall, we are in line with the plan.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, Wakao-san. In terms of MFN discussions in the US, so there have been numerous different statements about MFN, both from the president as well as others in the administration at a high level. So details have not really been shared yet at this point. We have not been contacted directly in terms of price negotiations at this point. We are gearing up and preparing for the potential negotiation of Entyvio as part of the IRA Medicare price negotiations. Now, MFN in general, there are a basket of countries that are being considered, we think, and we are assessing what the potential impact of that could be, depending on a variety of different scenarios for how MFN can be applied. So we're working on our own mitigation plans for that, and we're preparing, as I said, for the price negotiations as part of the IRA Medicare price negotiations. That is a place where the MFN type of approach could be applied, but we're waiting to see further details.
Yeah, thank you.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much.
それではお時間の都合もございますので、次のご質問を最後とさせていただきたいと思います。
Due to time
よろしくお願いし
limitation,
ます
the next question will be
最
the
後の
last
ご質問
question,
はゴールマンサックスの
which is
上田様。
from
どうぞ
Ueda-san
ミュートを解除して
from
ご質
Goldman
問くだ
Sachs.
さい。
Please unmute yourself and ask your questions.
ゴールドマンサックス証券の上田で
Yes,
ござい
this is
ます。
Ueda, Goldman
私
Sachs.
からオベプロクストの上市に向けた準備について教えていた
I
だき
want
た
to
い
ask
と思っ
a
ており
question
ます。
about the preparation for
現
the
状、ファー
launch
スト
of
インクラスでベストインクラス
Oveporexton.
の可能性というご
First in
説明をい
class
ただ
and
きま
best in
したけれ
class
ども、
potentials were
販売
mentioned
体
today.
制と現状どのよう
But
な
what
準備を
about
進め
the
ていらっしゃ
sales
るか。
team and
ま
what
た、
other
御
preparations
社の場合
underway
は
for
ナ
the
ルコレプ
launch
シータ
of
イプ1にフォーカス
Oveporexton?
するという開発
And
戦略上、診断もより重要に
because
な
you're
るのかな
focusing
というふう
on
に考えております。
NT
昨年
narcolepsy
の
type
R&D
1,
で
I
あっ
think
たような
diagnostics
デ
is
ジタ
very
ルを駆使し
important.
た診断技術など、
Last
上市
year,
後の
in
市
R&D
場
day,
浸
you
透に向
talked
けた
about
準
the
備とい
use
う
of
のがどのよ
digital
うに進んでいる
technology
かというところ
potentially.
も
So
合わ
I
せて
want
教
to
えていただ
understand
ければと
how
思い
this
ます。以上
technology
で
is
ござ
being
います。
prepared leading up to the launch. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Ueda-san. So a question on how we are preparing for the launch of Oveporexton. What are the approaches we're taking, including use of digital, etc. So I'd like to call upon Julie to answer that question, please.
Yes, thank you for the question, Ueda-san. As you can imagine, we are very excited to be preparing for the potential launch of Oveporexton for narcolepsy type 1 patients. So we are gearing up in terms of our commercial structure and organization, as well as our medical team, which is already out in the field educating on Oveporexton in narcolepsy type 1. In terms of the digital support for Oveporexton, we are looking at a number of different avenues and approaches to support, particularly diagnosis in narcolepsy type 1. This is an area where we are looking to unlock the bottleneck that exists in terms of diagnosis through sleep centers. So we will share more detail once we're able to do so. But this is quite an exciting opportunity for us. And as I said, we're looking at multiple digital avenues to support diagnosis and the overall patient experience.
どうもありがとうございます。私から以上でございます。
Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have.
ありがとうございました。最後に古田から
Thank you.
追加のコメントがあります。
Additional comment from
古田さん、よろ
Furuta-san.
しくお願いします。
すいません、若尾さん。ちょっと R&D の
Yes, Mr. Wakao.
スペンド Q1 について。
Q1 R&D spend, I just wanted to add some comment because there may have been some inaccuracies in what I said earlier. Q1, we had savings. And your question was whether this was according to our internal plan. And I have to say that the savings actually was bigger than what we had planned for. But R&D delivery implementation is according to plan. So saving is not impairing delivery of R&D. And we are really enjoying the benefit of the efficiency programs in the past, which means that it's possible that savings may be a little bit higher than we plan.
ありがとうございました。これをもちまして本日のウェビナーを終了させていただきます。
Thank you very much. With that, we would like to conclude today's webinar. We would like to thank you all again for being a part of this program despite a very busy schedule, and we appreciate your kind continued support.